Tristan.
Angelina.
Nama saya Syafiq.
Regina.
Habari asubuhi, Javi.
Jeg Jon Christian, og jeg bor I Norge.
I live in the United States of America.
In Australia.
Malaysia.
No Brasil.
Tunaishi Kenya.
My passion is for fashion and design.
I love to dance.
Menyusur hutan.
Para viajar e descobrir novas culturas.
Anapenda kunitazama nikipuliza mapovu.
Jeg elsker idrett og spille spill med familien min.
Minhas paixões são minha fuga quando as coisas estão difíceis.
Ada hari-harinya apabila melakukan perkara yang biasa akan jadi sangat susah.
When your disease makes you feel isolated.
It's difficult to walk.
Å være med på laget.
When I'm tired.
Afraid.
O controle da doença pode ser desafiador.
Atau mengecewakan bila saya kehilangan masa.
Muda muhimu sana.
But we learned to be resilient.
Para apreciar os pequenos detalhes que me trazem alegria.
Kumwona mtoto wangu wa kiume anavyofurahi tunapoenda nje. Nikijua anasikiza hadithi na sauti zilizo karibu.
Mencari titik perhubungan dengan masyarakat yang tak pernah saya sedar wujud.
Å være uavhengig på grunn av menneskene rundt meg.
Their fierce support.
Sua bondade inabalável.
They're big love.
Mine venner,
Keluarga,
Enfermeiras.
Doctors.
Support workers.
assistenter,
Mashirika ya wagonjwa.
Together, we are a strong community.
Nimeweza kuelekewa.
Histórias compartilhadas que me libertaram das dúvidas.
og ga meg selvtillit.
I am Tristan. I live with sickle cell.
I'm Angelina.
And she has CASC, a neurological disorder.
saya Syafiq dan saya hidup dengan ectodermal dysplasia.
Regina, eu tinha leiomiosarcoma, câncer raro.
Huyu ni Harvey. Ana SMA, Spinal Muscular Atrophy.
Jon Christian og jeg har OI, medfødt benskjørhet.
Esta é minha vida.
Suara saya.
And I am more than my disease.
We are rare.
Kami ramai.
Nós somos fortes.
And we are proud.
Great.
Welcome. I'm Peter Saltonstall, President and CEO of the National Organization for Rare Disorders, and would like to welcome you to our 2021 Virtual Rare Disease Day event. But before we begin, I would like to send out a special thank you to all those advocates and others who have spent so much energy and time supporting the rare disease community. So thank you. The role of Rare Disease Day is to bring together advocates and patients from around the world to help tell the story about rare diseases. There are events like this happening virtually all over this country today. And some of the audiences that we're really trying to focus on are those in the state legislatures, where advocates and legislative people come together to understand the burden of rare diseases and the impacts it can have on them, and therefore build the appropriate legislation and pathway to make sure that bills are passed that support rare disease patients. As a matter of fact, NORD's doing that in a very focused way with rare disease advisory councils. We've got them set up down in 16 states and are building them in others. I think 2021 is going to be an interesting year for us. The reason I say that is because we've just come off of a very difficult year with a pandemic that's impacted the rare disease community in a number of different ways and has really shown some of the inequities in the healthcare system. For all of you that are watching today, the importance of the Rare Disease Advisory Councils is critical to the success of being able to communicate the story and the needs of the rare disease patient community. So in conclusion, I would really like to make sure that I recognize and thank all of those sponsors who have helped us make this day a reality. Without your continued support, none of this would happen. So a sincere thank you from all of us at NORD and the patient community. Taking part in events like today's are really important to the rare disease community, and we must always remember that alone we are rare, and together we are strong.
Great. Great. So with that, I will turn it on over to Tamara to introduce herself.
All right. Hello and welcome to Rare Disease Day. We are so glad that everybody is here. I was so thankful we had over 75 people register today. And I was concerned after last year's success about how many we would have register. And I think today's event is definitely a success. So thank you for registering and coming today. You know, there's a saying in medicine that when you hear hoofbeats, think horses. And usually we see horses, but if you look closely, we know that you'll also find zebras. And today we are here to celebrate the zebras, people with rare diseases. My name is Tamara Mishak, and I am the volunteer state ambassador for the Rare Action Network for NORD. I'm also a zebra with 3 rare disorders. Being a rare disease patient and caregiver can be lonely. We can feel invisible. We often feel misunderstood, and we're often treated differently. But today is our day. Today we are not invisible. Today we're going to spend a little bit of time together. We're going to share and we're going to support each other. It's a safe place for us just to be ourselves. As Peter said, we are alone, we are rare. Together we are strong. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Anissa Reed. She is our for the Eastern region. She's going to visit a little bit about our report card and the Rare Disease Advisory Councils.
Great, thank you so much, Tamara. So let's start with the problem. More than 25 million Americans are living with one of more than 7,000 unique rare diseases. That breaks down to about 1 in 10 Americans. So even though that may seem like a lot, state decision makers still have limited awareness of the issues and impact that rare diseases have on patients, their caregivers, and the overall healthcare system. What is the solution? So NORD believes that it is to create what is called a Rare Disease Advisory Council. So that is a diverse group of people who come together from the rare community to educate elected officials on the unique issues that rare patients face. So to date, 16 states have passed RDAC legislation. So we also have several RDAC bills that are currently being heard in several other states. So we want to continue increasing this number to give as many rare disease advocates a voice in state government as possible. NORD highly encourages that different state RDACs collaborate with one another to share ideas and best practices. We plan to continue to develop and release toolkits and one-pagers, host webinars, and convene additional meetings to support ongoing RDAC work. So what is Oklahoma's RDAC status? So at this time, it does not have an RDAC in place. However, we have several great advocates in the state who are passionate about rare disease advocacy. So within the next few months, it is our hope that different advocates in the rare disease community in Oklahoma come together to start discussing plans to implement an RDAC. So it is a really important piece to have a diverse body of people within the state to discuss different state needs that the rare community have. So now I'm going to jump into an overview of an important tool that we use at NORD. In 2015, NORD launched its State Report Card project with a goal of evaluating how effectively states are serving people with rare diseases. This year marks the 6th edition of the State Report Card, which was compiled using data current as of November 2020. So these are the policy issues that NORD's report card focuses on. It's important to note, however, that these issues are not exhaustive. These issues touch on several critical and relevant policy areas at the state level, but with each issue included, there are still many others that are capable of impacting the lives of rare disease patients. So how do you find out where your state measures up? So you can select your state by clicking this link, and each state's page is also available in a printable version. So there are just, these are just small snapshots of some policy issues that impact the rare disease community in this past year. So current legislation and changes that have been made so far in 2021 have not yet been captured. So if your state recently passed legislation to improve one of the policy issues that might not have a high grade on our 6th edition, you'll likely see it changed in the 7th edition. So the website provides a detailed overview of the data, and you can learn more about each policy issue in the methodology section. So if you have any questions about our report card, then you can always send us an email at policy@rarediseases.org. Great. So with that, I will turn it on over to Tamra. New nickname for you.
That's what my family calls me. So. That's perfect. All right. And we'll be talking more about the report card too as we come together. But the Rare Disease Day is set aside to celebrate rare disease warriors and give them the opportunity to share their stories. And so the first person that's going to share their story is Bruce Simpson. And he is a rare disease patient whose life changed very quickly and drastically due to a rare condition. I'm going to let him share his story, but within a couple of months, he's changed the narrative and became an advocate, sharing his story and helping others as he became the Oklahoma liaison for the Guillain-Barre and Chronic Inflammatory Demyelinating Polyneuropathy Foundation. Bruce, I'll let you take it over from there.
Thank you, Tamra. Am I good to go?
You are good to go.
All right. Well, yeah, you just said a mouthful. Guillain-Barre, CIDP. I am the Oklahoma liaison to the foundation, and really enjoyed working through them to help others with this. It's one of those rare things. It's they say it's 1 in 100,000, and so I was one of those unique individuals to come up with Guillain-Barre syndrome. The term is AIDP, acute inflammatory demyelinating polyneuropathy, which I'm sure you won't remember that. But what it is, it's an autoimmune reaction that affects the peripheral nerves, which come off of the spinal cord. And generally, it follows someone having a virus or a bacterial infection where your immune system is really in high gear. And for some reason, which they're still researching, your immune system decides to start attacking the myelin coating that's over all of your peripheral nerves and starts eating that away. And it's kind of like if you would imagine a electrical wire with no insulation. So there's, it gets to where your muscles and your body cannot receive proper signals from your brain. And there's various degrees of being affected. With me, I was in total paralysis and was on a ventilator to breathe. But that's basically what it is. The CIDP is more the chronic form, which requires ongoing treatment. The Guillain-Barre is kind of like a knockout punch that comes on like a freight train and just takes you all the way down. But there is a recovery period and there is treatment for that. I was at age 62, I'd never been in the hospital, never had a doctor. I was an athletic, but there was no respecter of persons with Guillain-Barre. I was at work one day, my legs, the week before I'd had a slight fever. I got over it, went back to work. My legs started feeling heavy. By the next day, I was having trouble walking. I fell in the bathroom, hit my head on the bathtub, knocked myself out. The next morning I woke up, I could not get out of bed. and I was taken to the hospital, continued to degrade. My ex-wife told my daughter, who was with me at the time, she's in the health field and home health field. She said, it sounds like Guillain-Barre. Well, no one, my daughter or me didn't know what that was. So she went online and found the foundation website, Guillain-Barre Foundation website, got great information, realized this is exactly my symptoms. And then she set about trying to convince the doctors that's what it was. Well, several days later, we're doing tests. We're doing this test and that test. And she said, well, it's Guillain-Barre, and so finally, when I went into respiratory failure, they took me to the ICU. I did a spinal fluid test, said, yes, it is Guillain-Barre. And at that point, I went into a coma for a number of days, went on life support because my breathing was paralyzed. But it's a very scary thing. It's really hard to describe. And that is why I'm having recovered from this, I'm so glad to be a volunteer with the foundation. I volunteered to be a point of contact person, but I ended up being the state liaison. So be careful what you volunteer for. But it's been a blessing to be able to go into ICU rooms with families where someone is paralyzed, they're scared out of their mind, they don't know, what's going on. And for me to say, look, I walked in here, I was right where you are, and 80%, the average, make a full recovery over time, and inject that hope into the situation. And that's the key. It affects your body, but your mind and your soul, you think all is lost, you can't move, you can't speak. And so anyway, I did recover. I had to relearn how to walk, how to feed myself. Now I was like a toddler relearning all of these functions, but I had my daughter. I lived with her for a month afterwards. Was great. And within several months, I was back walking. Within 9 months, I was back climbing ladders and appreciating those small things in life, like going to the bathroom by myself, feeding myself, those little things that we do every day that we so take for granted. So anyway, the foundation is so good about supporting people. There's 182 chapters worldwide, about 50,000 members. It was started by Estelle Benson and Robert Benson in '83 around their dining room table. Now there's liaisons in every state, and we support and visit people and talk to them about this malady. And also they provide millions of dollars for support internationally with research and advocacy. So, I'm happy to share this with you, and thank you very much. And I just feel blessed to be able to do it.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And it is so much the little things sometimes that become so much important to us as we regain the ability to do those things again. The little things are so important to us. Thank you so much, and for the work that you continue to do. Bruce actually goes and he visits people in the hospitals and family members as they go through this. So thank you, Bruce, for all your work.
Oh,
our next speaker is Ethan Mazzio. Ethan is a graduate student at the University of Oklahoma Regional and City Planning Program. He is also a planning assistant at the Association of Central Oklahoma Governments. He has also been diagnosed with Marfin Syndrome, a rare genetic disorder that affects body's connective tissue since 2016. Although he can't drink as much coffee or play as much basketball as he'd like, Ethan leads a happy and ambitious career-driven life in Oklahoma City. And I just realized he's going to kill me because I didn't change one of the pictures in there. So I am very sorry, Ethan. I owe you very much a lot of coffee. So
we'll
I
call
love
it
you,
good.
Ethan.
We'll call it good at a matcha
Okay.
latte. Have a little bit less caffeine.
Okay. All right.
So the photo that she's talking about in that slideshow is the bottom left one. That's a photo of me right at the beginning of freshman year of high school. I would have been about, 14, 15 years old. And as you can tell in that photo, I'm probably about 6'2", 6'3". One of the big and it doesn't help that I've got red hair and, the whole thing. So I'm a very noticeable individual visually. At that time, being a 15-year-old and being about, I don't even know how tall I was, probably upwards of 6'3" or more, it makes you a very visually apparent person. It makes one of the most interesting things about my life growing up is that I've become a bit of a starer whenever I'm in public places, because I was always hyper aware of people looking at me and passing judgment on things that they didn't understand. I'm not necessarily a weird looking individual, but and I won't get into whether people should mind their own business if I am a weird looking individual, but there's something very tangible about being a 14-year-old that when they go out into the supermarket or when they go out to shop, they get looks. So anyway, that's a sidetrack. Yeah, the two people that I'm standing with there are probably average height women, probably 5'5", 5'6". I was about 6'3" at the time. Anyway, so as Tamara said, I have Marfin syndrome. It is a syndrome that affects the connective tissues in the body. It affects approximately 1 out of every 5 to 10,000 people, although new and emerging research puts the figure closer to 1 in 50,000, and it's a ranged thing depending on the country you live in even. But so this is an interesting disorder that has a lot of implications later in life. It sounds just as simple as, the collagen in your body, the elastin in your body functions a little bit differently as other people's would. In essence, it's a little bit more brittle and a little bit less elastic, obviously. What that means for people in later on in life is that they can suffer cardiovascular issues, they can skeletal system issues. Some of the more prescient symptoms for individuals that can present themselves earlier on in life are a tall and slender build, because this disorder actually helps you, it allows your body to grow taller because of that reduced elasticity. It's very odd. So myself as an example, like I said, I was about 6'3" or 6'4" when I was 16. I've grown to about 6'9" or so as of now. I'd stand up and show you, but I don't think the camera would do well to show it. But I think honestly, I was 6'9" at about sophomore, junior year of high school. So I've been this height since for about 7 years or so. That's part of what Marfan syndrome allows your body to do. There's another symptom, disproportionately long arms, legs, and fingers. So spider fingers are some of those things that people will talk about. It's disproportionately long as compared to the palm. Whenever it comes to the arms and the legs, it makes the torso look a little bit trunky, and it makes you look a little bit more like a gorilla, as it were. There's a couple of different odds and ends, things like this. Interestingly, one of the main ways that we found out I had Marfan syndrome when I was younger was not through genetic testing. It was through a simple test where you take your hand, you put your thumb across it like this, and you close your fist. As a young individual, where you can extend the thumb and it points out farther, usually for younger individuals with a higher flexibility in their joints, their thumb will come out quite a bit farther. And it's really interesting to see that just from that little bit, you can usually tell if a person has Marfan syndrome, just based on that one single symptom. More things that happen, and this is one that I deal with, as you might be able to tell by some very thick glasses. I have an ocular lens displacement in my left eye, and that essentially means that the connective tissue that connects my ocular lens to my retina, if I remember correctly, is incomplete, and it means that my ocular lens floats around, which means that I had to pay a lot of bills for what is the word, for eye doctor appointments, and I have for the entirety of my life. So that's just, some of the disease, but I think that there's much more to this. For me, even despite the fact that I've got red hair and I'm 6'9" and all this stuff, there's appearances and then there's people. I am an ambitious person. I am, like Tamara said, I'm pursuing a career in city planning, and I hope in the next 5 to 10 years to be directing departments. And hopefully what that means for me is community and economic development to make people's lives better. I also, although I can't play basketball anymore because it's bad for my health, but I used to love playing basketball, watching basketball. Over the period of COVID-19, I'm going to take you on a field trip. I have become a plant person. I don't know if you can see my philodendrons and my plants over on that ladder there. I've kind of gone out of my way to make it a bit absurd. I've got about 4 or 5 different tree species, 5 or 6 different philodendron species in my living room, and then a very large monstera plant and a couple others in my kitchen. There's more to me as a 24-year-old, even not even a person that's, you know, grown and had experiences in their lives. There's more to me than a disease. And I'm really glad that Tamara invited me to speak here today to be able to talk about this and express my opinions, because I know I'm only 24 and I'm kind of clearly rambling on about my life experiences, which I've had few of. But I'm really glad to be able to have a conversation about this disease specifically, where, you know, some of the latent issues or some of the earlier issues in life are just phenotypical. They're very visually apparent, but there's a lot more serious presences in this disease. So as the connective tissue kind of it's a fundamental issue that extends throughout the entirety of the skeletal system, the muscular system. Cardiovascular system is one of those premier ones that really makes an impact later on in life. One of the, about 40 or 50 years ago, the primary cause of medical issues with people with Marfin syndrome was aortic dissection. And it was, I don't want to get too graphic with it, but it was a bad situation that very often would not be able to be remedied in the time that it would take someone to get to a hospital or an ICU. Over the last 40 years, medications, blood pressure control, reparative surgeries have made life outcomes with people with Marfan syndrome and similar connective tissue disorders double, possibly, with life expectancies. Honestly, the life expectancy for people with Marfan syndrome back in 1970 was about 42 years. And for me, as a person that both has Marfan syndrome and high blood pressure, and has to and takes a stimulative medication that raises my blood pressure, I wouldn't be able to expect hardly anything out of my life if I didn't have medications that control this and doctors that help me and provide those resources. So today, you know, for people like me, there's a lot of hope that we can live a very normal life despite some of these prescient issues in our systems. There's no guarantees on how long my eyes are going to last in over the next 10 years. I think it probably is going to end up being, I'll probably have to get some kind of surgery to repair that lens in the next 10 years or so, but I'm going to enjoy my vision while it lasts. So, you know, just to summarize, because I know that I have done quite a bit of rambling, I can't say how much the medical community, how much other people with rare diseases, my family, everybody has been able to support me over my life. Whenever I found out back in 2016 that I was officially diagnosed with Marfin syndrome, it never really dawned on me the implications of that. I understood that, yes, I have an increased likelihood of aortic dissection later on in life. I have a possibility of having to have an ocular lens replaced in the next 10 years or so. But it never truly dawned on me until I started to reconnect with my family a little bit, until my sister had my niece and my nephew, who are now 2 years old and 1 year old respectively. It makes a really big difference to know that you have people that you live for and have people that support you. And it makes a big difference on what you perceive your life could be, should be, and who you live for. I think there's a fundamental issue to all of this that if you have somebody to live for and you have one of these rare diseases, you'll get your rear end in gear. And I'm really glad nowadays that I have a support structure of people, family, friends, Tamara, everybody else that make a difference in my life so that I can make a difference in my life. So with that, I'll quit rambling, say thank you.
Thank you so much, Ethan. In the comments, you got a few comments in the comments words that you weren't rambling, and they were very much complimentary, and they were thanking you for your comments. So Ethan is what I call one of my sons from another mother, and so he's one of my kiddos, and so we're cousins with my Ehlers-Danlos and his Marfins, so they're cousins in disease groups. So thank you, Ethan, for sharing. And you're so right that you know, we are not our diseases. We are people first who have diseases, and that they're two very separate things. So thank you, Ethan. I'm proud of you. Always will be. Our next speaker is Janet Wilson, and before I do much of an introduction, Janet will be our new co-ambassador in the next month. She'll be coming on board as a co-ambassador for Oklahoma. So we'll give her a virtual round of applause and welcome her on board. So we're excited to have her, especially as we move forward with hopefully getting an RDAC started. So we're very excited to have her on board. Janet is a mom to 31-year-old Alyssa, and Alyssa has Phelan-Mcdermott syndrome. And I wish I had my shirt here, my hoodie, but I decided to wear my stripes today. But as a member of the Phelan-Mcdermott Syndrome Foundation, she is a parent support representative. We have some claps, I like that, for Oklahoma, Arkansas, Kansas, and Missouri. And she serves as the chair's Foundation Advocacy Committee. Janet and Alyssa are active in Special Olympics, where Janet has coached for over 24 years. She lives on a hobby farm in Mustang with Alyssa, her son Mitchell, and her husband of almost 33 years, Rusty. And they have little goats who are so cute. As a program coordinator for Sooner Success, Janet helps families with special needs, primarily in Canadian and Grady counties, to find and access services. She collaborates with area agencies, organizations, schools, and providers to not only help families, but also develop programs, training to support and educate. Additionally, Janet helps parents who themselves have disabilities to navigate services and empower them to be better parents. Janet, turn it over to you.
Guys. Thank you, Tamara. Yeah, hey guys. So yeah, I'm gonna jump on the RAN train and help out Tamara get RDAC started here in Oklahoma. So yeah, my name is Janet Wilson, and I am coming at you not as a self-advocate, but as a parent advocate for Alyssa. Alyssa, like Tamara said, has Phelan-Mcdermott syndrome. Phelan-Mcdermott syndrome is also known as 22q13. She basically has a deletion on the long arm of her 22nd chromosome. You can Google that. It affects, we have, I would say right now, currently, I think we have around 2,500 identified worldwide. When Alyssa was diagnosed, there were only 400 identified worldwide. She was not diagnosed until she was 21 years old. The reason being that the microarray that was specialized or detailed enough to be able to catch her deletion wasn't widely available until then. We'd gone to genetics year after year because Alyssa loves doctors, loves nurses. She loves needles. I know. And they would say, well, you know, we're going to try for this. We're going to test for this, or we're going to just take pictures. We always knew that there was probably something there. It was just a matter of science catching up with her. But we went on with our life. We knew that she had an intellectual disability. We knew that she had some mobility issues. She was late to walk. She had speech delay. Then she would not shut up. And she, but we just had fun. She's played softball since she was 4 years old on a special needs league. We've done Special Olympics. We just, lived our best life, helped her to live her best life. So when she was diagnosed, it was kind of a shock. And of course, immediately, because it is so rare and unknown, I started Googling, and that's how I became aware of the Phelan-Mcdermott Syndrome Foundation. And they were very small. Seeing as how you only have 400 identified worldwide, of course the foundation is going to be very small, but boy, are they mighty. They are the most dedicated and go-getter group of families and loved ones that I've seen in a long, long time, and I don't know if I'll ever see them this dedicated. They had already started having biannual family and researcher conferences. Right after we found out our diagnosis, one of the parents had started what they call the Feeling Lucky campaign, which I'll talk about that in a bit. But so the diagnosis is made through different types of tests. It's mainly through the microarray. We have a wide range of kiddos. Not every kiddo has the same symptoms. They can vary. Some do not walk or talk. Many have seizures. Many have issues with feeding. A good majority of them are either suspected or diagnosed either primarily or secondary with some type of autism spectrum disorder. They all have some level of intellectual disability. We do have some other things. We have eye issues. We have kidney issues. We have lymphedema issues. Not every kiddo is the same, just like a snowflake. Everyone is unique. Everyone has their own little different points. So whenever I got with the foundation and got to my first conference and got to meet families face to face, that was like, the best thing ever, to be able to look into another parent's face and know that they knew what I was feeling. And for my daughter to be able to look at another child and it be her sister or her brother, because they're all a family for me now. They really are. So we have our conference. We started a parent network. Now we moved that from Yahoo groups. Now we have several groups on Facebook pages. They've started a registry where parents can go and upload their genetic report. They can answer all types of survey questions. So we have lots of information available to clinical researchers who want to do clinical studies. They started engaging and actively pursuing researchers that wanted to do different types of studies. We are fairly popular because we have that neurodiversity component. We have the autism component in with our syndrome. So that's why we are rather popular with those types of clinicians. They are very, very good, very, very good about pursuing biochemical and stuff like that. They've actually had now an offshoot foundation that will be targeting directly therapies and different types of research. So it's become very exciting as the time goes on. We just grow and grow and grow. We are part of NORD. We're part of Global Genes. The foundation has dipped their toes into a lot of different areas to try to build up awareness for our syndrome, but also for all types of neurodiverse disorders. One of the things that they've done that's really cool, a couple things they've done, is they are very good at giving support material to the families. And one of these is what they call our clinical care practice parameters. And this is something that they made up for the families to be able to take with them when they go to meet their first appointment back with the genetics counselor, or when they go to a new specialist, that talks about the different types of issues that our families need to be aware of for their loved one, and what they need to keep in mind, and do periodic testing or do baseline testing for. The other really cool thing we have is we have our own echo team, which is a neuropsychiatric team, and that is made up of clinicians that either themselves have a person, a loved one with Guillain-Barre Syndrome, or they are highly interested in this topic, and they've come together. And if we have a child that is having some psychiatric issues, crises, what have you, we do have a lot of kiddos that are also diagnosed with bipolar or schizophrenia. Catatonia is big. Regressions are huge in our population. Those parents, those loved ones, can access that echo team, and that echo team will work with that family's doctors there locally at their local level to give support and to give ideas to help to try to resolve the crises. It's really cool. Our other big thing with Pharmacogenomics syndrome is we have what we call Feeling Lucky. Feeling Lucky is going on its eighth year. It was started by one of our parents, and she wanted a way to fundraise for the foundation and to kind of solidify and bring together all the families under one banner. And so we have Pharmacogenomics syndrome, and we have Feeling Lucky. And this is our 8th year. We have a campaign every January for 2 weeks. And she makes up a design, a color, and we get it all out there. And this year, our 8th year, we sold a little over $100,000 worth of t-shirts and other stuff, sweatshirts and stuff. I have one on. I was sweating it, and the box came this morning. So I have on my Feeling Lucky shirt for this year. I was so excited. My box got delayed. I ordered too much. I overwhelmed them. So anyway, Alyssa had made me literally who I am today. Without her, I don't know that I would have been a part of Special Olympics. I probably wouldn't have been part of teaching in special ed in the school system. I certainly wouldn't have the job I have today that I love. I don't know what I would be doing. She's literally made me who I am. And I don't, I'm not saying this to toot my own horn, but I want everybody to come to that point to where they can be as strong an advocate as I feel like I have learned how to be. I did it mainly self-serving because I wanted things for my daughter. But I also have we have so many friends and family that are struggling in the state of Oklahoma and across the world that need support. And I really do think getting a rare disease advisory council going in Oklahoma is a crucial thing to be able to help the state of Oklahoma and our legislature be aware of how rare diseases affect the families, things that we need to push for as far as state and federal supports. I think it'd be an awesome thing. I think it's a natural progression to where we're going, because Tamara's done a wonderful job of pushing rare disease in Oklahoma, and so I think it's a great thing. So anyway, that's my story, and I appreciate you guys, and I'm excited to help Tamara move on and get the RDAC going, and thanks.
Thank you so much, Janet. Janet has been in, we were talking a little bit earlier before we got started, and Janet has been with NORD in Oklahoma, we think since everything got started. So she has worked with NORD and with the legislature since when there wasn't even an ambassador. So she's been working with NORD longer than I have. So it's going to be great working together. So I'm going to actually turn it back over to Janet, and I think Janet's going to do some introductions.
Yes, who's up first, Tamara? Is it Dr. Poland or Dr. Hall? I mean,
yes, Dr. Poland.
All right, Dr. Poland. Dr. Michelle Poland is with Integris Pediatric Specialist. She is board certified in clinical genetics and medical biochemical genetics in the U.S. She graduated from the Medical University of Gdansk in Poland and completed an internship, radiation oncology residency, and fellowship in Bydgoszcz, Poland. Subsequently, Dr. Poland completed a pediatric residency at the University of Medicine and Dentistry of New Jersey in Newark, New Jersey, a medical residency at the Nationwide Children's Hospital in Columbus, Ohio, and a medical biochemical genetics fellowship at the Children's Hospital of Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her quote is, "I love being able to use my knowledge to help and support children with genetic conditions and their families, as well as our adult patient population." She is joined, not necessarily in a speaker position, with her genetics counselor, and that is Harrison Moore. Welcome, Dr. Poland.
Thank you very much for this warm introduction. Thank you for reaching out to me at Integris. My name is Michelle Poland, like you introduced me, but you can see on that slide the name of our metabolic dietitian, Bailey, who is here with me and in the same room, and also with us is Julie, Julie Boyd, who is our metabolic nurse coordinator, specifically newborn screen coordinator. What I would like to share with all of you is that we are here at Integris. It's been almost 2 years since I started medical genetics services at Integris. We have a clinic, outpatient clinic, but it's a department, and I happen to be the first geneticist, and Harrison Moore, the first genetic counselor at Integris. And about a year ago, we were joined by Julie, the metabolic nurse coordinator, and by Bailey, the metabolic dietitian, and we have clinic nurse Holly. So currently there are 5 of us. This is what it takes to have a so-called metabolic team. And we serve at Oklahoma as a metabolic clinic. Right now we have 2 clinics in Oklahoma covering our Oklahoma State newborn screening. And there are 2 parts of genetics. One is clinical, and which is my role as a clinical geneticist. In the most part is to help other specialists to pinpoint the underlying diagnosis. If it happens to be a recognizable syndrome or disorder or condition described already in literature, everybody benefits. The patient benefits, the family benefits, and all the medical providers caring for the person benefit from knowing more and being able to help more the person. These days, medicine is really based on multidisciplinary management. One physician cannot possibly follow all the new discoveries in whole medicine. The other part, so I believe that genetics is more and more important as a multidisciplinary management. And there are conditions, there are syndromes from the clinical genetics which we follow as geneticists, and to make sure that the patient receives appropriate attention from the specialist at which may change depending on the age of the person, the needs and potential symptoms may evolve over time. So there are, like I mentioned, syndromes or disorders which we follow pretty regularly. And basically I could say that any person who will come to me with rare disorder, whether there is a multidisciplinary management available or not, I will help, and I will help to create the team. This is how I see my role as a geneticist, currently especially, where the treatment comes from genetics. I'm talking about the cause, the treatment addressing the cause. We have different treatments coming from the information, molecular information, which we get from our genetic testing. It could be enzyme replacement therapy, it could be gene therapy, and other supportive treatment which we already have, and we are getting more and more. The challenge which is currently, which patients and actually physicians or the whole medical community is facing right now, is that we have a treatment and it might be difficult for the person to find the provider or group of providers who will actually deliver the treatment. This is because so many new information we are gathering on a weekly basis, not saying new treatment. The other part of my specialty is the medical biochemical part, and that is a group of at least few hundred of disorders called metabolic. Some of them, some patients are very fragile and can develop, can be sick in a matter of hours or days. And this is why I actually like my field, because part of that is more chronic, but the part of that is almost as an emergency response. And this group of metabolic patients cannot wait, need help when they need help. And this is why we have the whole system in place. For the newborn screen in Oklahoma, we are alerted, either our clinic or clinic at OU. It depends on which clinic is chosen by the pediatrician who happens to have a newborn with abnormal newborn screening. When the clinic is chosen, then this clinic becomes a consultant for the pediatrician, any pediatrician or family doctor who cares for newborns. And then we do our job depending on the need. We confirm the abnormal newborn screening, and if it's false positive, we are closing the loop, saying that the newborn screen was false positive, no need for further intervention. If it's true positive and it's a treatable metabolic disorder, we have a team. Like I mentioned, the genetic counselor, metabolic dietitian, and nurse coordinator are working with me very closely, and we start the treatment accordingly to the underlying inborn error of metabolism, which was confirmed and diagnosed through the newborn screening. And there is a group of metabolic disorders which are not screened on the newborn screening, and they also belong to biochemical geneticists. And what I would like to say is that in most places, in all the states, the genetic departments are affiliated with the universities, and genetic teams are typically located at children's hospitals. With Integris, it will be very similar soon because Integris, their plans are to have a pediatric hospital at some point. And this is why they were open to have genetic services. It's a little bit delayed, but at some point we will have. At this time, I am at the clinic with pediatric neurologists and pediatric GI, but I would like to say that here at my clinic, I'm seeing adults, not only children. And at some point, I will advertise that online, because I believe that children have still better access to genetic services than adults. And I believe that adults should have better service. And we can only do as much as we can. We have right now two formal physical places where there are genetic teams at, like I mentioned, at Integris at OU, and also there is a genetic counselor working with the geneticist outside Oklahoma in Tulsa. So we have almost 4 million people, and we have about 1.1 million children less than 18 years of age. So it's a good population, and our services, we would benefit from having more genetic services in Oklahoma. There's enough work for everybody in my field in Oklahoma. I don't know what else to tell you. I think if there will be questions, I can answer. It was my understanding that when I talked to Tamra and Janet, that you wanted me to talk more about our service. So I did, and if there will be any questions, I will be more than happy to answer. And at this point, I think I shared everything what I plan to share with you.
Thank you,
Right.
Dr. Cullen.
Yeah. And if you have questions, we might put those in the chat, and we can look at those in just a minute.
So next up, we have Melissa Hall. Melissa is a licensed and board certified genetics counselor. She holds a Bachelor of Biology from the University of Central Oklahoma and a Master of Science in Genetics Counseling from the University of Oklahoma Health Sciences Center. Ms. Hall is currently employed as a genetics counselor in the Department of Pediatrics at OU. She has been has 13 years of experience as a genetics counselor in Oklahoma. I've known her for quite a long time because Alyssa goes to OU Genetics, and also because Alyssa and I both go every year, I guess for about the last 8 years now, to do what they call clinical correlations with first-year medical students, to let them know about how Phelan-Mcdermott syndrome affects our family.
Yeah, and Alyssa is very popular at that event. Did you guys want me to share my slides, or are they gonna be shared from your end?
It's up to you. I can share them if you would like.
Okay.
Whatever's easiest.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you when to advance, I guess.
Perfect.
All right. So hi, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting me. And my name's Melissa. I see that it says Michelle there, probably by accident, but I wasn't exactly sure what I would talk about, and I started thinking a little bit about the needs of the rare disorders population, and I thought that it might be a good opportunity to just raise a little bit of awareness about what I consider to be a very special profession, because I'm partial to it, but genetic counseling. So I think it's really important to raise awareness because of exactly what Dr. Poland was talking about. We have very limited access to care in Oklahoma, and I'm sure that there are plenty of people on here that have experienced what we like to call the diagnostic odyssey, where you went through a lot of doctor's visits and specialists and testing and all of these, different steps in the process, and finally, eventually, maybe get a diagnosis. I don't know if we have anybody on here that maybe never even got a clear-cut diagnosis. That happens as well. So I think the best way to reduce the that process is obviously through more providers. One of the limitations on getting more medical geneticists, so MD level providers, is that obviously you have to go through all that training that Dr. Poland listed on her introduction. So there's some limitations. Obviously, not everybody can go to medical school, but fortunately we have this amazing profession that you still have to go through and get a master's degree, but maybe not quite the commitment of going to medical school. And so one of the ways that we can improve access to care, I believe, is through genetic counselors. So I think my first slide just talks a little bit about what that is and how to become a genetic counselor. So genetic counselors they have advanced training in medical genetics and genetic counseling, and their job is to support patients seeking more information about inherited diseases and conditions and how that might affect them and their families. The first step to becoming a genetic counselor is to earn a bachelor's degree, typically in biology or a social science or related field. And then you go to a master's program in genetic counseling. There's about 30 schools across the United States and Canada that offer those types of degrees. So, one second, you can go on to the next slide. So genetic counseling is a really rewarding career, and it's actually exploding as far as its growth goes. Since 2006, we've actually grown by about 86%, but there's still a tremendous need for genetic counselors. It's kind of nice to be in the profession right now because you can you're guaranteed to get a job almost anywhere that you want to go if you're willing to move. Now, I have a heart for Oklahoma. I'm probably not going to go anywhere else. So fortunately, we at least have people in Oklahoma that want to stay. That is an issue, though, because like Dr. Poland was saying, we only have 2 centers for a pretty big population. We have a lot of patients that come from really far away just to be seen, hours, sometimes across the Arkansas-Texas border and places like that. So we definitely have patients that drive 3-4 hours just to be seen. So genetic counselors, you can go to the next slide, are in a lot of different specialty areas. A lot of genetic counselors work in prenatal area. We've got pediatrics, neurology, metabolic diseases, and also cancer. And we usually work in like university centers, hospitals, sometimes labs, and also nonprofit organizations and government jobs, kind of like, I'm sure there are plenty of genetic counselors, I'm sure, that work for NORD and Genetic Alliance and those sorts of groups. You can go to the next slide. So I just put up a little slide of some examples. Genetic counselors are actually really do a lot of advocacy for patients with rare diseases. We find support groups for patients. We can research, look into clinical trials, connect people with different registries, and the things that I put up there are just kind of some examples. Unique is a registry for chromosome abnormalities. We've got clinicaltrials.gov on there. So really, I think genetic counselors do a lot for this patient population, but I think we could absolutely do a lot more if we had time, some more time to be more involved, because right now we just have so many patients that it's really gets kind of difficult to get more involved in some of the other things I think that we would really enjoy doing. Like I said, especially here in Oklahoma, since we have very few providers. So I just wanted to talk briefly about just kind of the future of medicine in general and how that is going to also increase the need for all types of genetics providers. Back in 2015, during the State of the Union address, President Obama announced the Precision Medicine Initiative, which was an effort to kind of revolutionize the way we improve health and treat diseases. And genetics is truly at the center of that process. Even for things like, was it Bruce that talked earlier about the Guillain-Barre Syndrome? Right now, we don't know of that as necessarily being genetic, but I'm sure that in the future we'll find that there are genetic predispositions, there are triggers, there are multifactorial things that can contribute to things like that happening, even though it may be not what you traditionally consider like a truly genetic condition. And you can go on to the next slide. A lot of you may not know this, but there are actually, this is called pharmacogenomics. There are actually currently at least 70 drugs that have pharmacogenomic information in their FDA labels. This means that there's actually genetic tests that can look at how a person metabolizes different types of drugs and how well a certain drug will work on them or not work on them, how to dose things like warfarin. So there's actually that aspect of kind of the future of medicine too. One day your pharmacist will hand you something when you get prescribed and say, oh, well, actually, that may not be the best medicine for you, or your doctor will have that genetic information about you to kind of tailor, even common medications that we take now, like antidepressants and things like that. Another example of precision medicine or genomic medicine that we have is on the next slide, which is, I won't go into a lot of detail about this, but I just thought it would be important to kind of point out that even cancer is changing rapidly in the treatment of cancer, because now they don't just look at the person's genetics, they actually look at the genetics of the tumor itself, and they can target therapies and treatments based on that. I won't talk too much about that because that's kind of another field, but one of the things I wanted to point out, most people maybe in this organization might already have a diagnosis, but maybe not. And so there's this really amazing program. It's called the Undiagnosed Diseases Network. And oh, sorry, you can move forward to the next slide. I just put some numbers up, some current numbers up. Right now, they've had almost 5,000 applications. These are people who have actually already been through that diagnostic odyssey that I was talking about. They've been to genetics, they've been to specialists, they've had genetic testing, they've gone all the way up to whole exome sequencing, which is almost the biggest test that you can offer, and no diagnosis. So we've referred people a lot to this program, but they've received about 5,000 applications. They're reviewing around 300. They've accepted almost 2,000, and out of the people that they've actually evaluated, they have made a diagnosis for 445 of those patients out of the 1,482, I believe, that they've actually evaluated. So these people don't get accepted to the Undiagnosed Diseases program until we've exhausted, you know, every possible test, but they have some ways that they can test or access to grant money and things like that to do testing that's almost research based in some ways. So that's another program. If you guys know anybody who, you know, has a complex medical condition and they've kind of given up on finding a diagnosis, you know, maybe you could mention that it's possible for them to get referred to something like this Undiagnosed Diseases program. Out of the Undiagnosed Diseases program, we've also, there's been some other really interesting programs that have come out of that program. And on the next slide, I have an example of that, which is sorry, I missed my screen real quick. Okay, hang on one second. So the MyGene2, so that is actually a free public searchable site developed by families with rare conditions, clinicians, and researchers to openly share health and genetic information with one another by creating family profiles. It makes it easier to discover the genetic basis for rare conditions, diagnose rare conditions, and understand what we call genotype-phenotype relationships. So this MyGene2 is actually not just for people who have an undiagnosed disease. It's great for that, but it's also for people who have a diagnosis, but maybe it's something that's so rare that we're still trying to figure out, you know, how to treat it, what it means, connecting patients. So if you think about somebody who has a genetic condition that maybe it's 1 in a million chance that you can have it, but you have these registries and databases and things that people can participate in and join and connect with families all the way across, you know, on the other side of the world, then all of a sudden 1 in a million, you know, is connected to the billions of people, and you've got a good group of people that somebody might actually be willing to do a study on, even though it's something that's extremely rare. You might somehow end up with a treatment or a medication or something like that. So that's just an example. I did also really quickly just want to talk about something that I just think is really cool. So originally, you probably don't know this, but the initial draft of the human genome cost about $300 million worldwide for that initial draft. And then they estimate another 150 million to kind of refine that initial sequencing of the genome. And then if you add it all up, that first genome that we sequenced, they estimate probably cost up somewhere between 500 million to even as high as $1 billion to get that final perfected sequence. And believe it or not, we are now entering into an era within the next couple years of where we will have the $1,000 genome. So anybody, even without insurance, could potentially here in the next couple of years, and I know $1,000 is still a lot of money, but you know, have their entire genome sequenced for $1,000, and that's the ultimate goal. And the National Human Genome Research Institute actually has helped push this in that direction because they've developed a partnership with private companies and government funding to develop technology to quickly and cost effectively sequence your genome. So again, back to that diagnostic odyssey, the more we do this, the more we learn, the more we diagnose people, and the more people we can pull together into groups that we can study and actually, you know, ideally come up with treatments. I also, this is just really quickly, just something that I'm really passionate about that I wanted to throw in there as well. This is really big in research right now and also funding. So health equity is, you know, reducing health disparities and bringing us all closer to reaching health equity. And there are a lot of programs that are designed, and you can kind of see the steps that the little guy is standing on are to help him reach his best health possible are some of the programs. And of course, NORD would definitely be part of that, and just kind of getting people on equal footing as far as the opportunities that they have to reach their best possible health. So I also just wanted to throw this out there as well, again, just to bring it back to genetic counselors. We desperately need genetic counselors, and I pulled this up from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The job outlook for the next 10 years for genetic counselors is a 21% increase, and just to give you some perspective, the average is 4% for most professions. So this is definitely a growing profession and a growing need. And you know, like I said, there's limitations on how many people can maybe go to medical school or would want to go to medical school or commit that amount of time. But for genetic counselors, we support our medical geneticists in a way that no other profession really has anything quite like it. And so we can improve access to care, see more patients, you know, with genetic counselors working with medical geneticists to accomplish that. And I don't know if there are any legislators listening in, but I just wanted to encourage them, if they are, to review the House Bill 3235, which is called the Access to Genetic Counselor Services Act of 2019. As of right now, there are the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services does not recognize genetic counselors as providers. So any physician with no genetics training or any nurse with no genetics training can actually order genetic testing and provide genetic counseling services and get reimbursed for it. And we don't, even though that is our specialty. So that's something for you guys to think about. That if we can improve that, then we improve reimbursement. If we improve reimbursement, then we can increase the salary, and we can recruit more genetic counselors and ultimately help people get a diagnosis, advocate for them, pull different patients together, which ultimately results in more people getting treatment, because you get more drug companies and more researchers and more people involved in treatment, management, cures even, ideally. So I hope I didn't take up too much time, but I think I'm finished, and I'll stick around for questions for later.
All right, thank you so very much. Thank you so much. We have one last speaker, Margaret Dean from Covance, and we're running a little bit late on everything. We have about 7 minutes to finish everything with Margaret. I am sorry, can we condense a little bit?
Sorry, unmuting. So yes, so let's get started.
I'm very sorry. But we got a lot of good information.
No worries. Well, we can skip through. I think we've seen this a couple times. My picture here and background. I work at Covance. We're the drug development arm of LabCorp. If you want to go to the next slide. LabCorp is probably a more recognizable name to most folks here. 40,000 staff, mostly here in the US, with local collection sites and often working in hospitals to collect both basic samples as well as some of the genetic testing that we've heard from a couple of previous speakers. We do have a group of genetic counselors as well. And so I was really excited to hear a different perspective for how genetic counselors are being used and growing. So really important in this space. On the LabCorp side, we are a global, or sorry, on the Covance side, we're a global organization with offices in, I don't know the number of countries, but well over 60 countries. And we participate in over 50% of the industry-sponsored clinical trials. The next slide. You all know a lot of this, but we really our focus is across the spectrum of drug development. So we have groups that work in early discovery, helping to choose which compound will move forward into development. We work in early development in the preclinical spaces, in the non-human testing with animals, as well as additional lab testing, understanding correct dosing, potential side effects and safety, and understanding how the drug might metabolize the product. The core of our business where I work is in the phase 1 through 4 trials. And then we support sponsors after approval as well, learning more about the drug and the population and sort of enhance safety oversight. The next slide. So this is a traditional sort of life cycle of a drug. And I think you all probably know as well as anyone, this typically doesn't happen in rare diseases. So often the first study that needs to be done is a natural history study, a registry, understanding what the population looks like, how a disease progresses, before moving into what might be a single study for safety and efficacy to get product approval. So really it's a fun space to work because every product and every program is a little different. So it gets to challenge us as well as try to see how efficient we can be to bring a product to approval and get it to the patients who need it faster. Next slide. Okay, so a little bit, so I work in our rare disease and pediatrics team. And the reason Covance has this team is because the process is a little bit different. Rare diseases, as Tamara said in the beginning, right, physicians look for horses when they hear hooves. It is all about the zebras, and it's about the children where tweaks need to be made in the clinical trials to make sure we're meeting the needs of patients and of their families. This starts early in protocol design and review. We often work with patient advocacy groups, like many on the call today, to understand the schedule of events, the testing, and the support that is being provided to participants in the trial. Maybe skip to the next slide. No, we're cutting it close on time. One more slide. I mean, the general is we want to make sure clinical trials meet the needs of the patients, and that we support physicians who maybe haven't done a clinical trial in this population before, or ensuring that trials for pediatric patients are being done with physicians and sites who understand that getting consent from a family with a child or assent from a child is a very different process. And it's important to make sure they know what is going on in the trial and what the potential risks are. Lastly, the joy of working with LabCorp is that LabCorp is really directly related to patients, and we have 2 databases where we can connect with patients to understand protocol design, as well as reach out directly to patients who might be a good fit for a clinical trial. We're probably going to publish a paper soon that's helping to uncover sort of new understanding of patient populations due to some of their genetic tests, matching those with other clinical tests across a broad pool of a rare disease. So a lot of really neat things we can do to help understand patient populations, understand patient preference, and make sure that we're bringing drugs, or at least answers to know if a drug will work or not, as quick as possible. So Tamara, I went really quick.
Thank you, Margaret. You're amazing. You're amazing. And again, I'm sorry for cutting you off. Covance I learned so much about Covance just working with them a little bit, and they do so much for our rare disease community. And you know, I maybe hopefully bring you back to where we can give you a little bit more time at another time. So thank you so much.
That was like a whole new meaning to speed share.
Yes, exactly. Wait, Anissa, I think. Wait, Anissa, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay. Well, I think that we are a bit low on time. We do have a great thank you video, and I can always reference that and share that a different time. But thank you all so much for coming, and I'll let Tamara close it up.
All right, guys, we really do appreciate that. Appreciate you being here today. I've got a little bit of feedback now, but we talked about today is our day. Today we are not invisible. This is our month. We've got a day at the end of the month that is our day. Advocates are everyday people like you and me. We represent others, we offer a support, we rally for change, and we are about educating others. When people hear hoofbeats, they will continue to look for horses, but let's work together to remind everybody that there are approximately 395,000 zebras living in Oklahoma. In the next few weeks, we're going to be working, Janet and I are going to be working together. You're going to hear about some virtual events coming up, some meetings where we're going to collaborate and get together and talk about some challenges that we face as Oklahomans and try and get the RDAC started to where we have a bigger voice at the state level and get some things really rocking and rolling in Oklahoma and really get our zebra voices heard. So thank you again for being here. We're going to be drawing for some door prizes that we will be getting sent out to you. Thank you very much. If you have any questions or need anything, reach out to us at rareok.org. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Stay safe, and thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.